Alright, let's pull the pin on this grenade and just say it. I don't think Lord of Mysteries is as good as everyone hyped it up to be. Now, summer is stacked. There's an absolute metric ton of really good, highly anticipated anime that were coming out this season. And they've all been really, really good, but I don't think there's one that really quite got the treatment that Lord of the Mysteries did in terms of its fan base hyping it up. And now look, while I say I do not think it is as good as everyone hyped it up to be, that does not mean I think it is a horrible show. There are some glaring issues with it, but I do not think that those generally fall upon the studio producing this. Rather, they lie somewhere else, but we'll get to that. So to those of you who somehow have managed to not hear a single thing about this anime, or to those of you who are still quite like me on the first time I watched this through and didn't comprehend anything that was going on, here's the breakdown. Our main character is a simple, or was a simple, Chinese office worker who happens to decide to perform a luck enhancement ritual after a bad day at work, only to find himself waking up in another world entirely, as Klein Moretti, a student of history living in a steampunk world full of magic and monsters. So apparently the original Klein Kurt Cobained himself after snooping around in an ancient book full of dark secrets, and our main character happens to take possession of his corpse. Now, Klein finds himself getting entangled with the investigators, known as the Nighthawks, a group of Beyonders, which happens to be the people who possess special powers in this world, looking into the mysteries of several suicides in the missing ancient journal Klein had been attempting to decipher. So that is pretty much the summary of episode 1, and what will become pretty much the founding information of the next couple of episodes, really. There's some more details mixed into this thing, like the world being founded by another transmigrator like Klein, and also Klein impersonating a god to get information out of people. However, these haven't really played much of a role in the story in the first 3 episodes, and they don't really seem like they're super integral cornerstone pieces of the story just yet, so I'm only mentioning them here briefly so that they do get mentioned somewhat. But as I have alluded to, it is unfortunate that the first episode of the series is a massive fumble, if you ask me. Rather than actually getting me hooked on the series, I walked away from it feeling like someone had just hucked a concussion grenade through my window and left me dazed and confused.
Finally awake.
It's not like I hate the story. In fact, once I came to understand it, I thought it had a very solid foundation when you boil it down to the basic concepts it works with. It's not even because I don't like the characters either. Some of them are interesting, I just feel like the pacing isn't doing them justice. I kinda like Klein, even though I haven't really seen much of him yet that compels me to like the character, and others really have yet to get a good showing as well. But it's by far not that they're bad characters. And it's certainly not lacking in action or animation talent. So, it's not that either. The first episode fumble is entirely the fact that it's pretty hard to comprehend, and for new viewers, people who are not familiar with any of the original material or the source of this whole story, that's not a good thing. Even my chat regulars said the same thing about it when I brought it up on my regular Saturday live streams. I myself had to watch the first episode twice in order to feel like I actually understood the series of events that were presented there within. And this seemed like a fairly popular sentiment across the board. Many people seemed to not have comprehended exactly what it was that they had watched. New viewers didn't seem very happy that they were bombarded with a surplus of information that was often very poorly elaborated on for them. The power system is very poorly explained. They kind of give you an idea that people who hold powers are beyonders and that you can climb up the scale using potions, but that's about the only thing that you are even told. They don't do a very good job of explaining any of that, nor do they seem to give a good explanation as to why Klein has the ability to create his own divine domain, whatever that's even supposed to be. The introduction of the Nighthawks in episode 1 is so much of a mindfuck that the proper intent behind several things that happens there kinda still eludes me to this day. The bottom line in all of this is that this show has a terrible onboarding process for new people. If you have no experience with this show whatsoever, you are going to be mighty confused for a while getting into it because it does a terrible job of getting you up to speed. But that failure to onboard a fresh audience is about its greatest sin, and one that is apparently not even the fault of the studio working on the anime, but of Tencent, the IP owner. Accordingly, Tencent demanded that the studio adapted a certain section of the series by episode 3, rather than following a more proper pacing and making it a good experience for all us new people who have never had any experience with Lord of Mysteries to begin with. So, rather than actually making it enjoyable for new fans and trying to grow the audience and make it a big success, they decided to cram 75 novel chapters worth of information into the first 3 episodes so they could adapt a specific fight. Brilliant strategy, Tencent. Not how you're supposed to apply the 3-episode rule. According to this information, the team complained that episode 1 through 3 were the weakest because of this, and that everything after this point was of a far better quality. So it's not like I can really blame the studio for having to comply with Tencent's demands, but it really does seem to screw over this whole show if you ask me. Your pilot and your first couple of episodes are really important to setting the mood for the whole series. If you can't get people invested with those, and if they're more of a turn-off than a turn-on, you have a real big problem on your hand. And this, of course, all assumes that it actually is Tencent pushing all these demands, and it's not just an excuse because the studio was afraid about adapting a series in a much longer format. In spite of this, Lord of the Mysteries still debuted above a 9 out of 10. Meaning that many people still did like it. In spite of my initial negative impressions of it, I see the makings of a great anime in here. It's dark and gritty for a lot of the things. It seems to have a much more technically written story that has a good mystery incorporated into it. It's got that basis in supernatural mystery stuff that I do like, a very unique power system, and the main character does have potential to be an interesting person if given the proper pacing for the story. Perhaps it'll grow on me. I'm gonna keep watching it, but I do feel like this one got some major overhype from its fandom, because I wasn't as blown away by it as many others said that we would be. Sure, the animation may be superb, but I'd much prefer to understand what it is that I'm actually watching than just be presented with some pretty lights and flying fists.